Okay, how we're gonna go about this? Hi there. I just wanted to make a quick video, just talking about something that I found very interesting that I've been thinking about lately. How you don't actually need to be good at 3D to make good art. How about that? I mean, art is subjective. We all know that, so it all depends what you consider good art or not. But I think we all know when we talk about objectively good looking art, like aesthetically good looking, like pleasing to the eyes, like we all know what we mean by that, I think, right? So, what I wanted to talk about, first of all, let's talk about what good art or being good at 3D for me means. When I mean being good at 3D, I mean just, being good at 3D modeling, making good looking materials, texturing your models and whatnot. That's what I mean when I say good at 3D, like actually being good modeling and those sort of things. And when I mean good art, well, that, like I said already, that's subjective. So I'm just gonna specifically talk about good looking illustrations because that's kind of what I do. Uh, so yeah, that's what I mean by that. Um, so when I talk about you don't have to be good at 3D, I mean you don't really need to focus so much energy in actually learning how to be good at 3D modeling or making materials. Because believe it or not, people have already done that for you. You don't have to do that, which is pretty funny when I like figure that out because I used to be so worried about having to do everything myself and just you know it's mostly pride. Let's get out of the way. Like we all know, like you just want to make something yourself, but like when you try doing something yourself, you realize you didn't do such a good job because you don't have the experience, you don't have the skills, and unless that's what you want to do, unless you actually want to be good at 3D modeling and you actually want to be good at making materials, then sure, go for it. But if your goal is actually just to make good looking art, then you don't have to worry about being good at 3D modeling and etc. etc. You don't have to be. Well, what do I mean? Like you don't have to be good at these things? Well, because people have already done stuff that you can use. Like everything you can think of, it's already been done. Anything, literally anything that you would need for an illustration, it's already been done. Okay, so you should worry more about presenting stuff better. Because unless, like I already said, unless your objective is to actually be good at 3D modeling, you still need to present that 3D model, right? And if you don't know how to do that, unless you make one of those 3D render previews that Sketchfab has, for example, then you actually need to know how to take a good render, because if your final render doesn't really show your 3D model properly, like it looks good or not, then it really doesn't matter if the model itself is like impressive. If you can't show that through an image, then it really doesn't matter because people are not gonna tell. So yeah, that's kind of what I mean, right? You don't need to be good at 3D modeling. You need to be better at presenting your art. So if you well, you would be asking like, okay, so what do I do then if I don't 3D model? If I'm not good at 3D modeling, then what do I do? Well, my friend, that's very simple. You just kit bash your entire scene from scratch. That's quite simple actually. So this 3D this render, this final render, right? This is the Blender scene. I work in Blender, so everything I do it in Blender. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of a mess in here. There's like quite a bit of stuff. Like look at this. That's very nice looking, I know. But believe it or not, I didn't model anything of this. Any of this, I didn't model any of it. Maybe like one thing, like let's say, hold on. I know I modeled like a pole, something that here this thing over here. I modeled this pole, not even the sign, not even the sign. I just modeled the pole. that's that's all I model for this scene is pretty much that. Everything else is just from 3D Sketchfab. Some but assets like these sort of sci-fi future-looking buildings. You know, that's like the only thing I have that's you know paid asset, but but everything I do is 95% done for free. Like I just search the internet for the stuff that I need with the vision in my mind, right? Because if you don't have a vision of what you want the final render, the final image to look like, then you don't know like what to look for, right? So you kind of need to know where you're headed. You have to have, yeah, that basic concept or idea for you to know what to do. So I have this basic concept idea, and I just kind of search for stuff that I think it's gonna work, and I just start placing them in my scene, as I see fit. Of course, I only base it on what the camera is seeing, because everything else is not important. As you can obviously see, like, look at this. Do you think this looks good? I don't think so, right? But it doesn't matter, because in the scene it's actually very far away. You can barely see it, so it's really not important. It's only important what the camera is seeing. That's all I care about. What is the camera seeing? What looks good in the camera. That's all I care about. Everything else is extra. As you can see, there's like stuff here that I don't even know what it is. It's just not in the camera view, so I do not care about. You know, Everything I care about is what the camera is seeing. Everything else is extra. So that's kind of the whole point of it all. Just focusing on what my vision is, and if the artwork itself it's walking towards that vision, right? I don't care about modeling. I don't care about like good looking materials that I like for me to make or whatever. I just care what is, does it look like what I want it to look at the end? Okay, then let's keep going. That's kind of what it is. So yeah, uh everything, like, I textured some stuff myself. Well, when I mean texture, I mean we will be unwrapping and that kind of stuff. But like everything I do, I just make what's it called, box unwrapping, something like that. It's a very simple way of unwrapping your models that don't require you to be messing around too much with the things. Just not, I don't like to make stuff complicated. If I need to explain that in another video, then I will. It's really not complicated at all. Like everything you see, it already had its material, and if it didn't, then I just put a material that looked good in the actual camera. If it didn't look good in the camera, I didn't care if the material was cool in and of itself, because all I care about if it's in the camera looks good or not. So you can see this, it looks super weird. Like, what is that? Like that rusty ass material, purple looking building. And yeah, it looks pretty weird, but when you see it in the camera, it looks pretty good. So that's really all I care about. And you may think like this is a really complicated scene, but it's really not. It's just random assets, moved around in a way that looks good in the final render. Everything in the background is just images and a really weird looking city model with lights. That's all I care about. The lights, the lights that are gonna be visible on the camera. It's all I really care about. The shapes. I don't really care about the details. And here I only use some planes to put some images on, and to create that illusion of depth, and obviously stuff in the background. And the people are just some really basic 3D models of people. Like, they don't look good at all, but they work. They do the job. This is for background elements only. So like, if I were to put someone in front like I did here, I would use a higher quality model like I did. I found this quality by log, essentially, in Sketchfab. It looks pretty good. It's frozen. Okay. Okay, there we go. I just found it by log, I guess, and I just kind of used it. This wasn't even the original idea, but when I found this model, I was like, okay, this is gonna work just fine. And I just put it in there, put an umbrella, and just put it like she's holding it, even though she's not holding it. Everything that's in the camera is the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter if she's not actually holding it, if in the camera looks like she's holding it. That's all it really matters, okay? That's kind of the point that I want to put out there, right? Everything that matters is what the camera is seeing. It doesn't matter if your model is really high poly or really detailed or whatnot. The only thing that matters is the final render. That's the only thing that matters. So don't waste your time 3D modeling your stuff when you can just look it up on the internet and find it a good looking 3D model that can work for the vision that you have. What's actually important when it comes to making illustrations is a few points that I can explain real quick here. Photoshop, back to Photoshop. So this is the final render of that scene. Well, this is the final render, but then I, went to Photoshop and made some post-processing and whatnot, post-production really, to make it pop better. So this is the actual final render, final image, which is, a bit of a leap, not gonna lie. It's a bit of a leap from the final render and the final image. Yeah, like what a bit of a difference. Yeah, but this in and of itself, like it's okay, it's fine. It can always be better. So just put it through Photoshop, do some stuff with lighting, with colors, put on some rain. It's actually painted rain, obviously, with some splashes and whatnot. Everything about this, though, as you can see, like it has nothing to do with 3D, and it's kind of the thing that made it pop even more. Like it was already okay-ish composition wise, and kinda color wise, it was okay-ish. But this is the thing that really put it through the threshold of okay, this is good looking, and it has nothing to do with 3D. So you don't have to be good at 3D to make good looking art. That's kind of the point, right? You don't have to be focused so much on modeling, texturing, and whatnot. This is what's really important. The stuff that I would consider is even more important than 3D is these 5 points, which is 1, composition, 2, concept or the idea, 3, the color palette, 4, the style, and 5, fifth, whatever, the execution itself of the artwork. So if I were to compare, for example, I may have to make a part 2, actually, this is getting kind of long. Okay, if I were to compare one of this is a recent artwork that I did, but my most recent artwork is this one. This is my most recent artwork, right? It's okay, this is the final render. It's not the final image, but it's the final render from Blender, right? And you could say like, okay, that's fine, like that looks good, that looks pretty okay. Then this is the actual final image, right? This is kind of what I envisioned, more or less. But if you asked me, I would say that this one is better looking. It may be the colors, it may be the composition, whatever it is. I think this one's better looking, honestly, than this one. Just saying. And when I started analyzing why is that, I realized that is because a couple things about this list here. Mostly, the most important one is the execution one. When it comes to comparing these two artworks, I think the biggest difference is the execution. What do I mean by execution, really? Well, it's just how well do you do in the 4 points over here, I guess. How well you execute them, even though that's repeating the word itself. Essentially, right? When it comes to this artwork right here, I think I executed like 95% of what I envisioned this artwork to be. I think this is it. Like this is it, 95%, right? But when it comes to this one, for what I envisioned, I think this is like 70% of what I envisioned. Why isn't it 100%? Because I didn't execute all of these 4 things as well as I should have. It may have been because I was tired. It may have been because I wasn't realizing that I could do a better job, etc., etc. There's a couple things, of course. First of all, composition. When it comes to composition, right, you could say that's a good looking composition. Yeah, but I immediately, like the day after or 2 days after I was done with this artwork, like I already thought of a better composition for it to be more of the vision that I had. Like just literally like doing this, something like this. I think it was what is it? Yeah, okay, let's see. Something like that. Like just a closer shot to the actual subject, and like maybe the foreground elements being even bigger on the screen on the shot. Just doing that, it would have been closer to the vision that I had. just stuff like that. Yeah, it makes a difference at the end of the day. So like composition wise, that's kind of what I would have done better. The concept, the idea, it's okay. I wouldn't have changed a thing, honestly. The color palette, it's okay. I was thinking like a greenish, yellowish thing, maybe a bit greenish. I don't know. It's kind of like that. What's her name? Teal and orange, something like that. Like color palette thing, or actually color grading thing. That's kind of what I had in mind, more or less, with the reference that I was gathering. So like I don't think I executed that style so like I envisioned it. When it comes to color palette, yeah, that's what I said, right? Style though, when it comes to style, I was mixed up because if you check this one out, if you really zoom in, you can tell it's not photorealistic whatsoever, right? You can tell like it's really spotty, it's really splashy, it's really cartoony, it's really painterly. That's because I use the Kuwahara filter in Blender, which I really like. I really like how it just looks like a painting, which I really, really like. So I went all out with that filter. I just used it all the way, right? That's why it looks the way it looks. In this one, I use the Kuwahara filter, but I also like the way it looked, just based from the 3D, just more not realistic, but just that 3D look. I kind of like that 3D look, but I also like the Kuwahara filter, so I didn't really choose a side. I just kind of went with a bit of a mix, which is why it doesn't look as Kuwahara filter or as 3D Blender looking, you know, which is kind of what I didn't really give it that full sanded kind of vibe, which is what I think, in my opinion, what is lacking in this piece is just, a really full sanded kind of vibe on the style. Honestly, that's kind of what I think is missing. So, as you can see, these two artworks have the same approach, literally the same approach when it comes to the 3D part. Just making it in Blender, just searching for materials, searching for assets to use for the vision that I have, and just playing around with them in Blender, right? But when it comes to the final image, what makes a difference is all these things that I was talking about, that actually just makes a entire difference. Whether you pay more attention in one than the other, it's what actually makes a good illustration. So it's not much about the how good your 3D model is. It's how much can you, the vision that you have, how much can you make it a reality kind of deal, right? And how well can you execute it, which I think one of the most important things of making illustrations is the execution. You have to be intentional about all of these four elements over here. You have to be intentional. You can't just be like, okay, that I guess that looks good. I mean, I guess this will work. You have to actually think like, okay, I'm gonna do this like this because this is the way that it has to be. I'm gonna do this like this because this is the way it has to be. In this one, this hardware over here, I like it. At the end of the day, I still like it, but I think it could be better. It could be way better. It could always be better, of course, but I just mean it could be closer to this one for sure. If I just put a bit more emphasis on what I actually wanted, which was to actually use the Kawahara filter, to its extent, to its full extent, for it to look like this, and didn't half-ass it like this. So yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about. I know I rambled a lot. I just, my mind goes a lot of places while I'm trying to think and talk at the same time. So yeah, I might remake this video in the future once I learn how to actually talk and maybe formulate my thoughts better. But that's kind of all I wanted to say about the moment. So yeah, in the future I might make more videos referring to all of these points over here, explaining them better. Probably, yeah. And even a sixth point, I would say, that I think is the most important one of all of them, which I think not a lot of people actually talk about. And I think it's really important. So I might talk about that in the future. But for now, that's kind of all I have to say, really. So yeah, see ya.